What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? It is UFC 311 this weekend, and normally I don't do, I don't do press conference coverage, but I figured, I just started this MMA channel a couple of months ago. You probably should, so you probably won't see me like on the fight nights really covering the press conferences, but the bigger pay-per-view events like this, I probably will do some sort of reaction video to the press conferences and stuff like that. So for starters, I will say it's always interesting when we have these, Russian, Armenian headliners going head to head in press conferences. The shit talking can always get kind of interesting, but so it has some good spots though. It has some highlight moments, some good spots that I think are notable and fair to mention. So I wanted to start out. Islam is basically talking about the kind of experience that he has. The reporters ask him if Arman he felt had more experience since the last time they fought. Islam confirmed, yes, he has more experience, but I definitely have more experience too. Being the champion and fighting tougher competition, that sort of thing. So he felt like his experience would definitely match or supersede anything that Arman has gained during that time. And Arman basically said he wanted revenge first, and what he called only loss in the UFC, which I found interesting because I thought to myself, wait. Didn't you lose to Gamrot? He did lose to Gamrot. However, it was a very, very close contested fight. So I'm guessing what he meant by that was, I think I won it. Just like Sean O'Malley for the longest time couldn't admit that he took an L to Cheeto Vera. I guess that's where Sarukian's coming from. He referred to Islam as his only loss in the UFC, which, as we know, that's not true. He took an L to Gamrot as well. Either way, Umar and Marab were pretty fun. They've kind of been back and forth, gaslighting, trolling each other online and stuff like that, leading up to this event. So I wasn't surprised to see those two kind of going back and forth. They made this kind of fun. Umar basically said he's more Georgian than Marab is, which I, I thought that was good. That was good. I was like, okay, all right, Umar. Khabib wasn't really the, I guess, shit talker type. He was more, down to business. Plus, his English was quite broken during that period of his career. It's actually a lot better now than it was when he was fighting. And I think Umar, he's had exposure to the American culture a lot more, so his English is quite a bit better. But he said he was more Georgian than Marab is. And then Marab responds saying he can't even that Umar can't even represent Dagestan. He represents Russia. I was like, okay, wow. And Marab tells him he will be humbled. And of course, Umar's response to that is, I'm already humble, brother. I'm already humble. And that's kind of the go-to for those Nurmagomedovs and those Dagestani guys, which, humility is obviously a state of mind. What you say and what your state of mind is sometimes is somewhat conflicted. So he doesn't necessarily act humble sometimes, but at the same time, I think he understands and conceptualizes that he has to sell the fight, right? He's in the entertainment business. So whether he's humble or whether he's not, the stuff he's saying outwardly lends itself to, you don't sound too humble, but I get what he's doing. I understand what he's doing, and I'm glad he understands it too. People cheered the hell out of Yuri. He simply said, hello, everyone. You know how stoic and, just emotionless he is. Everybody really cheered him. I do love the part about, he had his head shaved for a young girl who has cancer, who he's flying in to actually see the fight tomorrow. And then, of course, he said he would be donating. He said 1 million crowns. I guess is some sort of currency, which I'm not really familiar with, but he did translate that to mean right around $50,000. And of course, Dana chimed in after that and said, I'll match you the $50,000. I do love that the UFC does stuff like that. I think when people get this sort of platform, it's good to donate and give to those who are less fortunate or going through some sort of illness like that. So thumbs up to Yuri for that. I've always said if I get a huge platform, and if this grows and I get to a point where I've got a lot of money, a lot of eyeballs on me, I want to be able to give and help those less fortunate than me. I think that's very important in this world. Not to get on a little soapbox, but that's the kind of guy I am. I feel like we're on this earth to help each other and to push and encourage each other. I feel like this life can be hard sometimes. You can't do it on your own. So you need others to kind of help, and we all need to come together as a team, if it were, and help each other out. So I really like that Yuri's donating that money and flying that little girl in, and I love the fact too that Dana immediately, without hesitation, said, "I'll match you the 50 grand." Um, there's going to be people hate on anything. There was a video a couple of weeks ago where Colby was, handing out food and drinks to homeless people and stuff like that. I mean, he caught all kinds of hate from that. And I just find it interesting because he's playing this persona, his fight persona from all accounts of people who have met him and been close to him in his personal life is completely different than who he actually is as a person. But it's one of those things where if you dare video yourself doing something nice, people immediately are like, "Oh, oh, oh, you don't video it. If you're just doing something nice, everybody shouldn't have to see it." I mean, there's a lot of haters, but yet Yuri gets to the press conference at the UFC press conference in front of the whole world and states that he's giving 50 grand to, someone who has cancer. That's a good thing. Nobody hates on that, which, I mean, I understand you got cancer versus homeless, whatever, but um, bottom line, giving and donating to charities and to those who are less fortunate is a great thing. And I love the fact that Yuri is doing that. And I love the fact that he sees that as his responsibility, having the platform that he has and having the money and influence that he has. And I love the fact that Dana, being in his position, is always quick to, match a fighter when they look to do something positive like that. So that was cool. That was a very cool moment. Oh yeah, and Umar. And then Umar, of course, gaslights the hell out of Marab. Say, "If you're Georgian, why do you live in America?" Basically, is what he said. And I mean that was pretty funny. I got to admit, but basically insinuating that Marab claims Georgia and puts Georgia on his back, but that he lives in America and stays in America and never goes back to Georgia. It's basically, through the broken English. That's what I was gathering what Umar was saying there. And of course, Marab, he started to get a little, I think, upset and animated there because yeah, I think he takes pride in being Georgian, coming from Georgia, and he knows that he has all his, Georgian fans and his countrymen and countrywomen watching him, and so I think that got up under his skin a little bit because he definitely became a little bit more animated, but he turned it into something good for himself and just said he came to America to achieve his dream, and then he began to, thank Dana White and the UFC for allowing him that he came from basically nothing to now being a UFC champion, and if it wasn't for UFC and Dana White, that would not be possible. And he's doing that to show the fans, the Georgians, the people back home that nothing is impossible if you put your mind to it. Anyone, even this little poor kid from Georgia, can become who he is and a UFC champion to live his dreams. Which fair enough. Fair enough. That's cool. You can't hate on that. The reporter asked Marab, he says, "You're 5 takedowns away from beating GSP's total takedown record. Do you think you'll surpass that in this fight?" Umar's response to that was, "No, he'll get that in the next fight. He's not going to get it in this fight," which I thought that was a good response from Umar there. Umar is pretty quick-witted. Umar is pretty quick-witted, especially for English being his second language. A lot of respect for these guys for doing this in English and not using translators and stuff like that. Sometimes they kind of get caught up and it's a little weird because obviously English is not their first language. I mean, you can't hate on that. I mean, I don't speak any of their language. So the fact that they're able to do as well as they do is pretty impressive, if I'm being honest with you. Armand basically is not one for talking. You know, you can tell he's just ready to get in there and do his thing. He didn't have a lot to say through most of this. He's just ready to fight. Jamal Hill, when he started talking, he started getting booed immediately. And he said something about, oh, they got all, fans are fickle. I mean, all they got to do is have some meat in their face. And he's like, he said something like, I'm going to put some meat in their face. And I'm like, okay, bro, what? Slow your roll now. Slow your roll. We're talking about putting meat in fans' faces. But I think what he was talking about is, um, there's a lot of hype surrounding Pereira right now, stuff like that. And all it's going to take is for him to do something, for Hill to do something big before then all the fans are going to be on his side. That is basically what he was saying. And I don't disagree with that. Of course, the crowd started chanting, Shama, 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 which is what Alex Pereira always says, which, listen, if you don't know what that means in his language, which I didn't, I've heard it a million times, but I've never bothered to stop and look it up, basically means fire or flame, but in slang terms, it's just the equivalent of saying, let's go, come on, that sort of thing. So it's kind of, something that's used as kind of a hype word for, I guess it's Portuguese, the language that Pereira speaks. But either way, the crowd started, chanting that. And Hill was basically saying, if he gets back up there and knocks out Alex Pereira, if and when they fight again, those same fans who are chanting Shama right now would then be his fans, basically, is what he was saying. It may not be wrong, man. He may not be wrong. I mean, a lot of fans are that way. They're very fair weather, which means you're winning, they love you. If you start losing, they're like, boo, boo. There's a lot of fans that are like that. I'm not saying all of them, but there's a lot where there's really no loyalty whatsoever. They just like whoever's winning, sort of thing. Yuri conceded earlier that week to the fact that he does need to keep his hands up. I've spoken about that at length several times, that he needs to be careful about that bouncing in and out of range, especially with a tall guy like Jamal Hill with good strikes. That's what got him KO'd. That left high kick from Alex Pereira, that works with some styles, that works with smaller guys, that works with people who aren't great strikers, but up against really good technical strikers, you need to keep your hands up, especially when you're floating in and out of the pocket like that, because if you don't, a really good striker is going to capitalize on that and catch you with something. So I was glad to hear that Yuri admitted he needed to keep his hands up. We'll see if he actually does that in the fight, because old habits do die hard. Jamal Hill said that he's ready for whatever Yuri shows up. And then Moicano comes in. Very first thing Moicano says was, "What's up, motherfuckers?" And then he, of course, gives a shout out to the first responders there in LA. Obviously, the UFC ended up staying in LA and not running from the fires and going to Vegas. They did have a plan B in case they had to, but I'm not surprised at all that the UFC ended up keeping it in LA. That's kind of the mindset of the UFC organization. I think that's one of the reasons that people love it. That's the mindset of Dana. That was his mindset during COVID. All these other, sports shut down and stopped running, and Dana White, they shut down for the times that they were required to, but then they were the first to get back out there and start doing their thing again. I just think it shows the determination and the resilience of, the CEO owner. And then I think his resilience and leadership kind of trickles down, and all of his staff up under him, I think, are the same way. It was cool that Moicano gave shout out to the first responders, because obviously they are in the shit over there trying to contain those fires. Then he talked a little shit about the governor. I'm not going to go much into that because try not to get political on here. But Neil dittoed that remark when it came to him about the first responders. Benil's a very religious guy, so he obviously gave a big shout out to the first responders as well when it came his turn. Moicano's all about getting the crowd fired up, man. He said basically that Benil's really, really good, really well rounded, but that it's free market capitalism and you eat what you kill. So he's going to kill him on Saturday night so that he and his family can eat, basically, which I thought that was pretty cool. He said he can't afford to lose. He's referred to as Money Moicano. So I guess he's trying to make all the money he can. He can't afford to lose. He is on quite a winning streak right now, which that's going to be interesting because Benil has lost two in a row after being on a very long winning streak. Okay, so Benil's really going to be trying to get a W back up under his belt, and then Moicano is trying to keep his streak going. So that's one of the fights that I'm actually really interested in seeing that one. I think that's going to be a really, really good fight. Moicano said he respects Benil, but it's Money Moicano's time. Let's go. Benil responded, God will decide whose time it is, which that's pretty par for the course for Benil, being a religious guy like he is. When they asked Rainier a question, he basically just avoided the questions like, you Americans are crazy. Crazy. Who's drinking tonight? Who's drinking tonight? I come drink with you, you know. like they ask you a question, bro. He just completely avoided the question, but he was having a good time with it. Kevin Holland had a pretty good comeback to that. Kevin Holland chimed in and said, even if you get knocked out, you can still go party with all these people tomorrow night. Which I thought that was a good response. But I am picking Rainier to win that fight, by the way. I think he's going to grapple Kevin Holland to death. I watched Rainier's highlights when I did my pre-fight breakdown to 311, and it was 14 straight minutes of clinching, grappling, and submissions. That's it. That's it. I mean, you literally saw almost nothing else. In his last fight, submitted Gerald Mearshart, who is a very crafty jiu-jitsu guy himself. So that lets you know what Rainier's intention is when he goes in there. And I don't see Kevin Holland being able to stop that. Kevin Holland's got good striking. So you never know. He might be the boogeyman in this case. He might be able to come in there and catch Rainier with something. But I see Rainier being on him immediately. As soon as that fight starts, I see Rainier being on Kevin Holland like white on rice, like immediately. So we'll see. Holland said that Rainier is getting KO'd, and then he tried to make a deal with him and was like, don't do any wrestling for the first 3 minutes, okay? So that lets you know there that Kevin knows what kind of game plan Rainier's coming in there with, and he and his team absolutely have watched Rainier's fights, and he knows that he's coming for that. Armand's kind of a man of few words, but the reporter asked, how will you beat this guy with 14 straight wins? And this is the part where it's kind of hard sometimes with these guys with English as their second language. Sometimes they don't really answer the question. And if they do answer, they kind of answer in a different way, just their own interpretation of it. And that's kind of what he said. Basically, just his response to that was, because I'm the best fighter in the world. They were asking for more specifics, like, what are you going to do that the last 14 straight opponents didn't do when you get in there with Islam? And his response was, I'm the best fighter in the world. Like, okay, that's not what I asked, but okay, thank you very much. You're not going to talk shit to him because he might go punch you, since Armand likes to punch fans. Anyway. You might want to be careful what you say to Armand. I'm just saying. Reporter asked Islam about LA, basically saying there's a huge Armenian presence there. Does that bother him at all, fighting on kind of Armenian soil? And his response to that was, when he fought Volkanovski, he fought in Australia, so he was in another guy's territory then. When he fought Poirier, they fought in the U.S., he was in other territory then. So it doesn't bother him. Nothing matters. Once they close that cage, no one can help them. And where they're at doesn't matter to him, basically, is what he was saying. The reporter asked Islam if he was injured. He said there were reports of him being injured. Islam basically said, do I look injured? I'm good. I'm ready to fight. Towards the end there, they said something to Arman about that it's being said that Islam really has no weaknesses, and that if he has any, it would be his endurance, which they saw in the Poirier fight. And of course, Islam jumped in. Where you get this information? Yeah. I mean, I agree that, I mean, that was a grueling fight between him and Poirier. I mean, these guys are humans as much as we see them as cyborgs and well-oiled machines, which they are. They're also human. They're made of bone, blood, and tissue. That showed in his fight against Poirier because it was a 5 round grueling war. And props to him and Poirier both for putting everything they had into that fight. So I think that's what he was talking about. But, to me, I didn't see that necessarily as a weakness. I mean, he still was able to finish, then submit Poirier in the 5th round. So you can't really say that he gassed or anything like that. I mean, of course, he was getting a little tired. I mean, it was a really, really grueling pace. Dario said that he loved being here in Orange County, because he's from near that area. So he was saying that he loves being there. He gets a lot of energy from being there near where he's from. They basically asked Armand how he felt being that there's such an Armenian presence there. And this part was kind of funny. He said it gives him energy, stuff like that. Islam said he had more friends there than Armand did. Then Armand said, "No, my friends are working right now. They'll be here at the fight tomorrow night." So it was fun. There were some fun moments there. Nothing too major. It was pretty good considering several of the guys there were English as their second language. I mean, sometimes you don't get a lot of the one-liner sound bites as you do with other guys, but still. I mean, I thought it was fun. I thought it was pretty entertaining. Moicano did a good job of kind of getting the crowd fired up and everything like that. So, looking forward to that fight. I'm looking forward to all of the fights. So we'll see what happens, guys. I just want to give a quick reaction on that. I hope you guys enjoy the fights. That's something I'll definitely start doing as the channel grows and as it starts getting monetized. I'll definitely go live for like fight companions and stuff like that for the probably the prelims and the main card. But I may not start doing that yet. May wait until the channel gets to that monetization phase, which shouldn't be long. We're like a quarter of the way there. The channel's only been in existence for 2 months and already close to 250 subs. So that's great. It's moving right along. So anyway, like the video, subscribe to the channel, comment down below, and don't be afraid to share the content if you would. Anytime you can share, it's a win for me. And that's what I need for the channel to grow. So anyway, thanks so much for watching. I will see you guys on the next one. All right, peace.